Hi, my name is Joshua Schoen, and I'm sitting down here with Brad Goodwin from COTI. He's a BD manager. And Brad, introduce yourself.
For sure. So I have been with COTI in a core role for about 9, 10 months. So I'm new as of 2025, joined officially in March, but I've been following COTI for a really long time. So I was a community member from probably around 2020 all the way through. And then kind of just followed COTI whilst mining fiat, and then a role opened up, and now very luckily working for the core team for the best part of a year.
That's awesome. Yeah. 2020 sounds so long ago
It
compared
is. I
to
mean, for crypto, that's like half of crypto, right? That's like half the time we've been around.
for people who don't know what COTI is. I know that there was an older version of COTI and now there's a COTI version 2. What is COTI and what is the difference between the old version and the new version? What is the latest and greatest?
Okay, so that is a big question. So, to our point, if Coty had been around since 2017, so that really does make us like a dinosaur, like an OG from day one. And to be honest, the environment was just very different then. It was, we had different performative features. Back then, Ethereum couldn't really scale and then do it in like a cost-effective way and stay secure. So we had this notorious blockchain trilemma, and that's what we were solving for back then. So we were a not privacy, we were a payments-based protocol. We allowed an enterprise to basically own their payment rails. So rather than like outsourcing it, you could host your own payment system. You'd have your own branded token, your own stable coins, and naturally save the margin that you would normally give out to a payments processor. What we've done
which
since
is
then,
which is like for the PayPal or any sort of Visa, it's like 3.5% oftentimes. Like it's
it's a
significant.
lot. It's very like industry dependent. But if you're working en masse in like consumer sectors, then you're often working with thin margins, but you're kind of making your buck off of volume. So where you can start to make those savings, it was quite paramount to those types of industries. But since then, we have very much changed tact. So COTI V2, as you likely say, is very different. So we're now based on privacy, which is great now. Privacy is probably the preeminent narrative in Web3. A lot of noise about Zcash, a lot of noise about these different privacy protocols. But for us, we were really focusing on it when it wasn't popular, when it was still associated with terror financing and illicit activities. We kind of stepped back and said, no, this is an enabler for institutional assets. Privacy, if you do it correctly, gets you closer to regulatory compliance. And so that's what we've been working towards. So we've positioned ourselves as an Ethereum layer 2, fully EVM compatible, but what we allow you to do is use privacy in real time, at scale, and for negligible cost. And for the informed on privacy, that is normally very hard to do. So we're quite proud of it.
Talking about institutions and privacy and compliance, what specific problems does Cody version 2 seek to solve? And how far along are you in that goal?
Sure. So I think when it comes to privacy, you almost go back to the origination of blockchain, right? And I think the properties that blockchain was heralded for were typically its transparency, its trustlessness, and its like verifiability. That's what people loved about it. You come forward 10 years and suddenly it's the biggest blocker to like mass consumer adoption and to institutional adoption, which is this huge oxymoron, but here we are. And what we're solving for within that context, if I had to boil it down, is probably like three things. So the first is just the moral compass of the user and their human rights. So privacy fundamentally is a human right. For me personally, I imagine you're the same. I do not feel comfortable sharing my wallet balance. If I've taken out a loan, I don't want my debt positions to be public. If I go to a shop, I don't want people to see how I'm spending my money. Like these are all things that I feel is my digital footprint, and I should have the autonomy and control over who sees that and what they can do with it.
Yeah, that's the big part of it. It isn't it there's a separate issue between whether or not you think it's a good thing for the privacy to be there and whether or not a blockchain is even capable of providing that, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the blockchains, the incapability to provide the privacy is in itself an entire additional issue. There are some times where you would want your transactions to be as public as possible, where you want your balances to be as public as possible. In the case of like reserves, for treasuries, or
Cool.
like knowing that, say, Coinbase actually has the Bitcoin on their books that they allege to have. That's like an important thing. But the inability for users on an individual level to have any control is like a feature that pretty much every other blockchain totally lacks, except for COTI.
It's a major omission, and it is one of these luxurious things about being an OG in the space, but having being able to relaunch with a new strategy, because we're able to launch a new network with all the bells and whistles that we typically see on, like, high throughput, low cost, but we get to overlay this privacy piece, which is a massive piece. So I think so. In terms of what we're solving for, so it was firstly that piece on the user, but secondly, if you look at it from a regulatory perspective, which is super boring, but GDPR is like a global framework, right? And even if you're in local jurisdictions, by extension, they use GDPR. It's the gold standard for how you handle consumer data. One compelling piece from that always stands out to me whenever I'm kind of answering this question is you must have the right to revoke access to that data. Now, if you're on a public network, the second that you put confidential consumer data on a public network, it's immutable and it's there forever.
Yeah.
So you've immediately violated the most common practice regulation in the space. So like that's one other major thing we solve for. And then the third thing is, if you were to look at financial institutions, right, they're not going to exchange in gilts or in treasury bills or in tokenized real estate, because there's an implied level of trust within financial markets that you do not expose the strategy of institutions, you keep it confidential, and that's your role as an exchange and a broker dealer. If you are using a public blockchain, you implicitly break all of that trust down. So when you say what are we solving for, I would say like the user in terms of their rights, but then also regulation and the trust of institutions. I think you lose all of that on a public ledger.
Yeah, the idea that you would keep the actual strategies of these institutions private per institution is extremely important. Like payment for order flow is itself a product. Like you are, without privacy, you are giving away 100% of the information of payment for order flow,
Yeah,
which is a huge industry. It's massive.
yeah,
Like it's a numbers so large they start to sound made up, like they're from Cookie Clicker or something. Like it's ridiculous.
yeah.
Uh, so with regard to the privacy layer itself, garbled circuits. I have had to make 2 or 3 videos now on COTI, and I have read about garbled circuits. And do you have a preferred metaphor for explaining how garbled circuits work? Because I have not been able to make a good one yet. Is there like one that is floating around in house at COTI that makes this more intuitive? Because it is a complex thing, even in the abstract. I have a degree in mathematics. I studied this, and I'm like, wow, applied privacy.
Mm.
This is not trivial.
No, it's really complicated, and like there isn't. I don't have an in-house metaphor, but now you've said that, I'm going to hunt for one. Um,
Yeah,
Maybe we can.
please do send it when you get it, because that would be of great use to me. If I could make some sort of whiteboard crypto related video where I just like have a nice metaphor to work with that's reasonable, that would be so helpful, because it is really something novel that you guys have done with the encryption and the privacy for this. It's fantastic.
It is, and yeah, kudos to the technical team. Unfortunately, it is super hard to explain. So if you come up with that whiteboard video, please ping it to me because I will take it into every call I have on BD for the rest of my time. But look, the way it works at the highest level is if you're a user on COTI and you want to keep things private, you'll be given a key, and that key lets you send data into the network, and you can like lock it up. You can encrypt it. So if you want to make an order on the DEX, you want to buy something, the data is your intention. Like I want to buy this many tokens for this amount. You lock it up with your key. You send it to the network. From that point, as soon as it touches the network, it is locked. It is encrypted. Nobody can read it. Now then it's kind of passed through a few different environments, but we get to garbled circuits. So garbled circuits can change your order into a very complex string of letters and numbers, but it can operate on top of it. So it will be able to run circuits on top, and it will be able to inform and say, we want to make this purchase, we want to match this order to this order, and it can execute that logic whilst never decrypting the actual underlying data. So what you're doing is, it's almost like you are taking the ingredients for cooking a recipe, you're not telling anybody what those ingredients are. You're putting it into a magic oven, and then when you take it back out the oven, you've got this, like, I don't know, roast chicken, or this shepherd pie, or whatever it is. I'm very British, clearly, but that's ultimately how it works. You send in your data fully encrypted. We analyze it while it stays encrypted. You never reveal the underlying data. So whether that's your age and an identity, a swap on a DEX, or the amount you want to borrow from a lending pool, the rest of the world will never see that. It's encrypted end to end.
Yeah, even things like in the case of you know, bringing more users to blockchains, right? Uh, you could have NFTs with something like your own credit score, your actual real world credit score on them, and nobody wants to be giving that away for free, or the last four of your social security number. If banks want to come to a blockchain, they're not going to be taking anonymous users. They're not. Like, that's laughable. It's
Yeah.
it's not just laughable, but it's also like financial suicide. Like, no bank is going to risk that. So the idea to even have like some level of accountability where you have an NFT with like where you live for your zip code, the last four of your social security number, and your credit score that's issued by some company that actually specializes in those things and can be assured that that is the case. That would be an incredible value add, right?
It would be a huge value add, and like that's a much better example than a shepherd's pie that I came up with. I mean, if you were to throw in a credit score, you can use garbled circuits. You can compute over the top of it, and you can verify that your credit score is above a certain threshold, for example.
Yeah.
But nobody ever learns what your credit score actually is, or why it is what it is, which is super important. But for the
Yeah,
bank, you have trust, which is equally important.
that's awesome. So, what does this do? This garbled circuits. What does it do to the gas costs on the blockchain? Does it increase them? Can I turn it off if I don't care about privacy for a specific set of transactions? How much control do I have over this?
For sure. So, look, as a developer, you have composable privacy. So, garbled circuits is built into our infrastructure, but it's not mandated. So, as a developer, if you're building out a D app, you are very selective on what you want to be public and what you want to be private. That could be for different reasons. Like you've said, if you have a treasury and you want proof of reserves, you might want that information to be public. But there's other, like, consumer data you want to be private. Then you choose what's public and what's private. So the developer can choose what's public and what's private. There's a good example right now. Privex is a private exchange. All they do when it's private is just put a green border around the screen, and then you're private. So as a user, there's no work choosing between public and private. It's just done by the developer. Similarly, for a user, for what you're in control of, i.e. for your transaction details, or if you own a digital identity that you hold on the blockchain, you then choose that it's private, but you can also select who can see it and who can't. So sometimes it's not even a choice of what's public and what's private. You also get the controls of, I want this to be private to everyone else, but I want it to be viewable by one or two or three different parties.
Yeah, so you could expose it to, say, some group of people who have like an NFT or a membership.
Exactly, or to a
Awesome.
regulator. To the question on gas fees, we are we operate with negligible gas fees. I mean, obviously they're variable, but
That's been my experience with using COTI. Is it's like sub 1 cent most of the time, even with
it's
garbled circuit transactions.
yeah, it's borderline crazy. Today, which is the 8th of December, if anyone wants to fact check me, we will do over 100,000 transactions on chain. The aggregate cost will be less than $2. I haven't looked, but I know that will be the case. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
it is ridiculously low cost. And that's because we are designed to offer privacy at scale. We want to be a private backend for apps on COTI and for apps on other chains. We can't scale privacy if it comes with the typical computational overhead that is present in ZK or FHE or TEE. So we've purposely made it like near zero.
Okay, let's get on to some of the fun stuff. COTI Earn is live. We had
Yeah.
season one. We have season two. How many more seasons do we get?
You'd have to ask our CFO. I don't know. That's not on me. I'm not in charge of the incentive pot. But hopefully a few more. I think people really like it. So hopefully a few more.
Right now on CarbonDeFi, if you create strategies with specific trading pairs, you can earn token points, and those are redeemable for COTI at the end of the season. Right now, I've got some points from season one, which are
Yes.
currently boosting the points that I have from season two, which is great.
15% boost from holding your TPs from season one into season two.
Yeah. The strategies that I can make there are true on chain limit orders, range orders, and the RBot has been helping with the liquidity and routing and volume. Uh, have you seen the RBot in action on COTI?
I have just seen the R-bot breaking daily records. I think it's coming from Jen that I've seen it, but I know
Yeah.
it's been growing, the number of transactions, the volume. I've seen it smashing a couple of records.
We've had a bunch of success on Say, Celo, TAC. We've been the number one gas consumer on the TAC blockchain for like months in a row now. And
Wow.
it's been the case with COTI as well, where the RBot comes in, it looks for opportunities to perform arbitrage on various dexes or protocols within the COTI ecosystem. And everybody benefits from that volume.
Yeah.
Everybody benefits from that volume. Users get tight, up to date prices. The strategy creators on CarbonDeFi get their strategies traded on, which is where they make the rake on the trading fees that they charge there. Uh, Users at Privex get to see that their options are able to be exercised with actual liquidity behind them because they're up to date.
Yeah.
And I imagine that quite a few of those 100,000 transactions that you're talking about are going to be from the RBot just working on the ecosystem.
I would hope so. And if you're in one of the top 25, if you're the top gas user on COTI, you have got special privileges in COTI Earn, just as a plug. So I
Oh,
think the top
that's cool. We'll have
25
to
get
check if
extra
the RBot
rewards.
is
So
number
yeah,
one.
your R bot is going to be collecting some ludicrous points. But no, that's great. It's a really important piece of the ecosystem in granting stability, also in boosting like yield and really just building out different options for everyone. So super good addition to the ecosystem, and very glad to see it breaking records on COTI and everywhere else because I didn't know about everywhere else, but it's good to hear.
Yeah, we're the RBot is on like I think it's 10 different blockchains right now,
Hmm.
with 90 different dexes and protocols integrated, and it's arbing like I think 7 or 8 thousand different pools.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just been so great watching the RBot. We have a notifications channel on Telegram for when the RBot makes transactions, and I've just had to mute it because it's doing like 6 or 7 thousand a day at this point.
Oh wow,
Like, yeah,
that's
and
brilliant. Really
yeah,
good.
that's like just between like Coty and Tack, I think. It's been totally crazy.
I'm glad the privacy layer hasn't totally ruined it for the art bot. If it's still doing that many, we're okay. We're fine. I think the average transaction cost on COTI is I think it's 0.0000, maybe another 0.6 USD per
Yeah.
transaction. It's something in that range. I don't know if it's 4 zeros or 5 zeros in decimals, but it's very low.
Yeah, at some point it's just accessible.
Yes.
Like it's just accessible. So let's start wrapping it up just a little bit. You talked about being a community member for Coty back in 2020. I was actually in the same boat. That's how I got involved with Bancor. I was just a really active member of the Bancor DAO, and eventually, they wanted to hang out, and now I'm doing this in a more involved fashion. Uh, what got you into crypto specifically? For me, it was that I was just kind of a math nerd coming out of college, and I was like, what is this whole Bitcoin thing really? Like, what is actually going on here? Is this a real thing, or is this just like a meme that's going to go away with time? And I went just down the rabbit hole for about a year and a half before I ended up at Bancor being like, oh, these are one of the OGs. How did you get involved with Coty? What is your story there?
Honestly, my journey with crypto is actually born out of frustration. I think so. Um, it's a land of many promises. Let's put it that way. I think, and before joining COTI and when I was a community member, so I worked with PwC, accountancy, consultancy. Then I worked with Adobe in global strategic business, which is software as a service. And in that period, I just wasn't motivated. I think primarily because, and maybe this is just part of human nature, but I find it hard to be motivated by stuff that's already done. And I think blockchain promises so much of what could be. You look at like payment rails that are 30, 40 years old. You look at the time
Yeah.
it takes to do a international wire transfer, like these basic primitive things that should be easy. And I just looked at it as something that is a step change in like the tech. So I got into COTI, loved what they were doing, and then honestly just got very integrated into the community, met some like incredible folks that I'm very lucky to now call friends.
Yeah, the crypto ecosystem has some of just the most incredible talent. Like that was some of the thing that really blew me away when I went to my first conference, right? Was like, yeah, there are some people there with like, there was a Dogecoin McLaren, like, like just a McLaren just covered with
Yeah,
a Dogecoin, and I was like, okay, that's fine, that's funny,
yeah,
but they're actually at at the tables at these booths, there are developers, and they are absolutely brilliant people, and it has been like one of the great privileges of getting to like walk into a room and not be even close to the smartest person there. Like it's very humbling. Yeah.
it really is. There's nothing worse than being the smartest person in the room, I think. There really is. As much as it's unsettling to be the idiot, I think it's if you're going to further yourself, I think being in a room with people smarter than you is a good thing to do. So
Yeah, it also
I
it
agree.
makes you believe in the project, man. Like
It
ultimately
does.
these things, until agentic AI really does take over, ultimately
Mhm.
these things are built by people, and
Yeah.
you want to be on a team with good people.
I agree. And if AI is the future, invest in your own downfall and all that. So just pick the right side of the war. But yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think crypto's a wonderful place. You meet wonderful people. I think you're aspiring to things that haven't been done. And I like that. That's the right arena for me. It sounds like you're the same. So and we both had a
Yeah.
good pathway into core teams as well, which is nice.
I think I just want to review in case viewers might be a little unfamiliar with what you're talking about when you talk about the frustration with wire transfers. It is still the case in the modern financial ecosystem that if you want to send $1 million from where I live, Michigan, in
Hmm.
the United States, to where you live, Great Britain, the fastest way to do that is to withdraw cash from a bank, get on a plane, and fly it there.
Correct.
That's the actual. It's like still right now today.
Yeah.
It's not even close. Like an international wire transfer, as cool as it might be for smaller amounts of money, the kind that a regular person would use, sub $10,000.
Yeah.
Your family member gets scammed on a vacation while they're in Italy or something, and you gotta send them cash to and just work it out. Like, yeah, that'll work. But the
Yeah.
moment you start moving into six-figure territory, you're nearly back in the Stone Age.
Yeah.
You are Magellan with blocks of gold,
It's
physically
genuinely.
bringing it from continent to continent. It's ridiculous.
I totally agree. It is ridiculous. It's it takes a really long time to the point where I don't like when you were first getting used to blockchain, you would send a transaction, and because the UX was never that good, you would worry like, is it ever going to arrive if I send it
Yeah,
to the wrong place?
I
It's the
remember
same
that.
feeling. It's the same feeling though. But you send this wire transfer, and you're like, uh oh, have I got this right? Is it coming? Has it been lost? Like it's been 5 days. So yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, it
It is a real
sucks.
problem. Yeah, it
Uh,
does suck. So we need to solve for that. But they're like I guess the major things we have to solve for first. But really, I think there's very few things that you shouldn't move to a blockchain. I think you can do a lot of wonderful stuff a lot better.
what's the thing that you want to tell everybody about that like they might not know about from like just seeing the COTI docs or the COTI Twitter or maybe the COTI Telegram? What's like the big secret that you want to share with everybody about your ecosystem?
I think the big secret is that, and I would hope people do know this, but I think the big secret is that very soon we will have private DeFi on Cody. And when people start talking about privacy, and they're talking about Zcash, and we're talking about these primitive send and receive privately, people start to think about the next phase of privacy, which is programmable privacy, which is complex logic. COTI will be the first that enable true privacy for DeFi. So if you want to lend and borrow, if you want to swap through projects like CarbonDeFi, then we're going to be the first to pioneer privacy. And not only that, even if you're not building on COTI and you're on Solana or you're on Base or you're on Arbitrum or you're on Polygon, you can still use us as a private backend. So the one thing that I would say to get across is very, very soon, private DeFi for everyone.